Here's a thinker who really makes you question society's weird rules, showing how to live true to nature, even if it means being a bit of a public scandal. Diogenes of Sinope's own life took a wild turn. He and his dad got exiled over a money mess, a currency debasement scandal, which pushed him into super simple living. He cooked up his own super extreme version of cynic ideas, taking simplicity to a new level by crashing in public spots like a big ceramic jar, and famously chucking his only cup after seeing a kid drink with his hands, figuring even a cup was an unnecessary luxury. Plato even called him a Socrates gone mad, which pretty much nails his edgy, provocative take. Diogenes' whole philosophy was a direct punch in the face to how everyone else thought you should act. One of his most out there ideas was shamelessness. He basically argued that if something isn't shameful in private, why should it be in public? This led him to do things that totally freaked people out, like eating, peeing, and even pleasuring himself right out in the open, all designed to show up the silliness of society's rules. Maybe the most legendary story is his chat with Alexander the Great. The most powerful dude around offered Diogenes any wish. Diogenes, just soaking up some sun, simply asked Alexander to get out of his sunlight. This bold move, this total lack of interest in power, was so striking that Alexander himself supposedly said, "If I were not Alexander I would like to be Diogenes," kind of admiring the philosopher's complete and utter freedom. His hardcore rejection of social norms made him hugely controversial. For Diogenes, nature was the ultimate guide, and he looked at animals as perfect examples, not weighed down by social fakery. It's pretty cool that cynic itself comes from kion, the Greek word for dog, showing how much he admired their uninhibited way of life. Diogenes totally leaned into this, explaining his doggy nickname. He'd wag his tail at folks who gave him stuff, bark at those who didn't, and, well, bite the bad ones. Living naturally meant ditching society's bad advice and learned behaviors, just saying no thanks to buying more stuff or chasing status. This shaped his really simple lifestyle, his famous public challenges to social rules, and his sharp takedowns of anyone living an unnatural, superficial life. One of Diogenes' core ideas is the importance of self-sufficiency, or what he termed autarkeia. He believed that true freedom and happiness really stemmed from being independent of external circumstances, material possessions, and the opinions of others. Think of his choice to live in a barrel, own virtually nothing, and rely on begging. This was a deliberate practice of this very principle. By minimizing his needs, Diogenes aimed to demonstrate that happiness was achievable even under reduced circumstances, and that dependence on luxuries and social status was a form of enslavement. His famous encounter with Alexander the Great, where he asked the emperor to step out of his sunlight, perfectly illustrates this concept. Diogenes valued his freedom and self-reliance above any favor or material wealth the most powerful man in the world could offer. Diogenes famously said, "Poverty is a virtue which one can teach oneself." This quote really encapsulates his belief in the empowering nature of self-sufficiency. He didn't view poverty as some misfortune, but as a state of liberation, a freeing from the burdens of material desires and societal expectations. By actively choosing a life of minimal possessions, Diogenes sought to cultivate inner strength and independence. He believed that the less one needed, well, the freer one became. This self-imposed austerity was a form of training, a kind of ascesis aimed at achieving mastery over oneself and one's desires, ultimately leading to a state of true self-sufficiency and happiness. Diogenes saw society's rules as a total sham. He believed that so many of them were just fake, even harmful, and got in the way of living a truly good life. It seemed to him that everyone was chasing empty stuff like wealth, status, and what others thought of them, instead of actual virtue and truth. And yet, Diogenes didn't just complain from the sidelines. His legendary act of wandering the streets in broad daylight, holding up a lit lantern and saying he was searching for an honest man, was way more than just a quirky performance. It was a powerful, almost painful statement about the widespread dishonesty he saw everywhere, a sign of his deep skepticism that anyone around him was genuinely good, and his gut feeling that true virtue was just incredibly rare. Diogenes wasn't just about grand gestures, though. He challenged all sorts of social customs, from how people ate and dressed to how they behaved in public, often breaking these rules on purpose just to make people stop and think, to expose how absurd they really were. He famously mocked Plato's definition of a man by showing up with a plucked chicken, a classic Diogenes move to show his disdain for abstract ideas that had no real-world use. "The mob is the mother of tyrants," he once declared, a quote that really shows his deep distrust of the masses and their tendency to just follow leaders without thinking. He felt people were too easily fooled and often helped keep flawed systems going. His whole rejection of social norms came from this belief that these rules just hid the truth and stopped people from living real, authentic lives. By smashing these conventions with his words and his wild actions, Diogenes was trying to jolt his peers out of their mindless acceptance, urging them to live by reason and nature, not just by blindly following old traditions. Diogenes' shamelessness was deliberate and provocative. He believed society's rules about modesty were largely artificial, serving mainly to mask people's real selves. And so, to expose this, Diogenes would just openly do things Athenians found shocking, like eating, urinating, or even masturbating in public places. Deep down, his aim wasn't just to offend. He wanted to reveal the hypocrisy of these norms and argue for a life lived more honestly and in tune with nature. This provocative shamelessness wasn't just random. Understood philosophically, it was about putting nature and reason firmly above mere social custom. When people called him out for masturbating in public, Diogenes reportedly shot back, "I wish it were as easy to banish hunger by rubbing my belly." This wasn't just a witty comeback. Understood in terms of his philosophy, he was showing how society's shame around some natural acts was as absurd as being ashamed of hunger, a basic need. By living so openly, Diogenes hoped to tear down those artificial walls people build around themselves, urging a more straightforward, uninhibited connection with our own bodies and natural drives. One of Diogenes' big ideas is that living a truly good life isn't just about having smart thoughts, it's about serious training. He believed that to live virtuously, in sync with nature, you needed more than just understanding things in your head. You had to constantly practice and be disciplined. Think of his super basic lifestyle, how he deliberately faced hardships, and his way of publicly calling out society's silliness. These were all his forms of this mental and physical workout. He saw reason as the main tool for getting a grip on the natural world and for making solid decisions on how to live. Diogenes often used his quick wit and logical points to highlight the problems in everyday thinking and the two-faced nature of his peers. He felt that by really looking inward and applying reason, people could shake off society's illusions and grab hold of genuine wisdom and happiness. He once famously said something along the lines of, "For the conduct of life we need right reason, or a halter." This really hits home his belief in how vital reason is for steering how we act. He was basically saying that if we don't use our reason right, we're pretty much lost and need someone else to pull our strings, like animals on a leash. For Diogenes, real freedom wasn't just doing whatever. It came from the power to think critically and to live by your own reasoned understanding of nature and goodness, rather than just blindly following what everyone else did. His entire life was a powerful example of this dedication to reason and the continuous training needed to live an authentic and independent life.